I'm Kylie Wangenheim. I'm Business Development Manager at Big Zeta. I have here with me our VP of Global Business Development, Steve Cholas.
Good morning, Kylie.
Good morning. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
I'm digitally engaged right now.
We are doing the new normal in two different places at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining me, Steve. I know we have some really great stuff to chat about. So we'll jump right into it. So Big Zeta has been around about 2.5 years now, but the business has been around for a long time. So
that's an interesting way to introduce Big Zeta. Yeah. So Big Zeta, as some of the folks that are out there listening to us understand, we started in 2018. And then to where we're at now, as really a reaction or a solution to now this very popular theme of digital transformation, right? So, the entire Big Zeta company was built on the ability to help distributors and component manufacturers or anybody within the ecosystem in this electronic industry, confront and deal with and how to deploy a digital transformation strategy, right? And fortunate enough today, and Kylie, you're part of this now, and been with us for a few months, almost 6-7 months now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do want to get into some conversations on some of the customers that you interact with, right?
Sure.
And same with me. We can kind of, give a better understanding of what we're seeing happening in reaction to this no longer a phenomena of digital transformation, but the need to why should I, and how can you help me transform myself digitally to deal with the new user culture that I'm, confronted with, if you will. So it's an exciting time for us, and we've been very, very lucky, to have, the success that we've had so far. But back to you, Kylie, for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And great point about some of the conversations we're fortunate to be able to have. We have sometimes dozens of them a day with, hundreds of people that have been in this industry or have been on either side of it or are new to the industry or are expanding their horizons. And, we're all constantly learning and growing what works together. And no one customer is the same as the other, but we certainly see similarities regardless of, the size of our partners, the size of their business, the size of their, their workforce. But most people have a very similar goal in mind, and that's, to grow and maintain their business and their positioning in their ecosystem. So how do we do that and have those conversations with all these different, shapes, sizes, forms, and make it really work for everybody?
Well, you bring up a good point about, we talk to different size companies all the time and different disciplines within those companies. And it doesn't matter the size of the company. You can be, 5 or 10 million, and you can be 50 billion, but everybody shares the same problem today for the most part. Same problem is, and I think I'll start that with this. I think most of the conversations that I have, I've got to navigate around with that person or group of people. Have they accepted digital transformation as an absolute necessity going forward in their business model? It's not easy to have a conversation with somebody to see if they accept digital transformation, because I think most of the time they can't define it themselves. What does that mean? And I think that becomes the biggest hurdle initially is, let's talk about this digital transformation, right? Well, what does that mean to you? Because it can go as broad as digitally transforming my entire organization, enterprise, from operationally, manufacturing, design, everything, right? To as simple as start with the website. And I think it's a good place to start, right? No matter what size company you are. Then I think one of the first things that always surprises me is when we've talked to companies, right, Kylie, that, let's say they're a $100 million company, right? And we've got a few of those. And yet our first engagement is with them that, oh, by the way, your keyword search on your site doesn't work.
Right.
It won't even spell check for me, right?
Right.
How can you have a conversation about digital transformation if that may be an acceptable level of existing today, right? That's a big challenge. And I think people need to be able to step back and seriously take a look at, what do I think digital transformation means? What does it mean to me personally? What does it mean to our company? And do I have buy-in, or am I aligned with the C-suite? End of the day, that C-suite has to sign off on what we're going to do. Do I spend $10,000 or $1 million? It really doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but you have to be able to understand, how do we get to that point of accepting and then move that along to an agreement that we've got to do this? Because ultimately, Kylie, we hear it all the time. What's it going to cost me, Steve? What's it going to cost me, Kylie? Oh my God, or that works. What are your thoughts with some of those customers that you talk to?
Yeah, and I think that's just such a great point about, whether, you're a 50 to $100 million company, or you're a $1 billion company, or you're a $1 million company, and it kind of all starts on the ground floor. So, and we have plenty of folks that are at the smaller end of the spectrum as well.
Sure.
And the conversation always starts the same way. Where can you start and make an impact? Do you understand what all of the pieces are of your digital presence? Sure, you have a website. People expect that. That's
when
great.
You say digital presence, you mean their technology stack that they have, that they use to present themselves? Is that what you're referring to?
That's certainly a part of it, but the digital presence really is how is what you are reflecting and portraying to your user base, whether it's engineers or direct buyers or distributors that are coming to your website. What are you giving them as a tool, on the surface, and how on the back end are you not only meeting their needs, but meeting your business needs? So that might have something to do with your tech stack, but it has a lot to do with how your ecosystem interacts with that. I really like that we've brought that term up early, because I think that it applies in so many ways of this conversation, both with, within the company, within your selling environment, within your digital ecosystem, and all of those pieces playing into each other. But also to the point that, how much is it going to cost me? Well, let's start at the ground level. What's going to make an impact quickly? What can you do right away? Because if you're not doing that, your competitor probably is. And if they're not, they should be. So, for me, having mostly grown up being able to jump on a website and find any company that I have a question about, if I'm not finding what I need, really quickly, I'm probably on to Google again and going to the next guy. So that brings up that level of importance of initial engagement and keeping both your business but your buyer in mind.
It all gets to why I should do this, right? I mean, at the end of the day, why should I digitally transform myself, right? And I think folks would be surprised on how many people ask that question. Do I actually need to do that? Or it's good enough what I have today, that kind of thing. I think this gets back again to acceptance that, can we all agree, or can you and I and the customer, can we agree that you need to digitally transform? And you get to that by understanding what are the goals of the company, right? You just touched on some of those things, right? And because you can't run from the reality that the user culture today is different than what it was 10 years ago. Right. It's almost like not even worth to have that conversation with somebody if they can't accept that. And a lot of them that don't accept that, or don't fully embrace this new user cultures, because they probably really don't know the significant difference of that behavior of that person, be it an engineer, buyer, what have you, or somebody coming to your site just to kick it down the road. Mm-hmm. That person predominantly has got a digital, experience that they came into this industry with already. Many of us in this business did not come from that culture. Web didn't exist, right? So I'm not going to harken back to those days. Don't need to do that anymore. They're all gone, right?
Although you could, but yeah.
I could, sure. I think it's, we have to help customers a lot of times, understand that transitional user that has taken over this industry, right? Because that culture is now replaced, that inflection point has happened. It is just going to increase exponentially. A percent of users are more and more digitally savvy. They want something easy, fast, and right now. I want to get it. I want to get it. And you've got to build a digital engagement level that does that for them. So let's talk about the salespeople, right? Do I really need to have more and more salespeople deployable to the field if I've got a new user community that's taking over dramatically and they want things digitally that before I was able to have delivered face-to-face? What do I mean by that? But we can be very simple. Data sheets, app notes, reference designs, those things are all digitally acceptable now to get, from websites, right? But there's also the ability to design and engage in design tools that before you had to really count on someone coming and sitting in front of you face to face and talk it through, right? A lot of those engagement levels that were face to face can all be done digitally now. It's not to say that we don't need salespeople, because I'm a salesperson, so are you, Kylie. So you have to have that. How do we as salespeople accept the digital transformation and use it to our benefit while my company invests more to transform us to digitally be adaptable, acceptable, and used by our customers? I, as a salesperson, can evolve with that. That becomes a lot of questions that I have with a lot of customers, is
absolutely
don't need those salespeople. I don't need as many, right?
Sure.
So I think the biggest conversation that I have with people is coming to terms with the acceptance of digital transformation, and what does that mean? What does that mean
Absolutely.
for me? Gosh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to just elaborate on that too. Just, everybody being in that, getting to that point of having it. It's all about, what does it do for me? What does it do for my business? How will you actually be able to help me? And, you can look at it from the perspective of, okay, time is money. Let's start with that. What will it cost?
Yeah.
What will it cost you to have a 30-minute conversation with me just to talk about it? Let's talk about it. And that might be it for you. I doubt it. I think at some point, it's just inevitable, but what does that really mean to you? And then it's talking about, again, those levels of engagement. If you were to look at it like an infomercial, you might have a salesperson that's frustrated because they've made 50 cold calls and people don't answer their cold calls anymore. Especially, in the last, year plus, people are at home. They're trying to balance work and life. A lot of people have their kids at home. So, the start of the infomercial is a frustration, but as they see that their website has introduced people to more resources, those tools, those building opportunities to, especially in this industry, if someone can build out, a piece of equipment or, a part that they're interested in, and then your salespeople have that first interaction is that much warmer, that then you're saving time, time, and you're making that salesperson and that consumer, again, whether it be an engineer, a buyer, whatever, so much more engaged, so much more quickly.
Yeah, to get engaged. So let me dumb this down for a minute, right? So I think ultimately at the end of the day, for your website, people want three things. I want a lot of people to come to my website. I want them to engage, and I want them to convert. Right? That conversion could be some call to action, be it a buy now button or a download or attend a webinar or whatever it may be. But those essentially are the three things I think that people want the most to happen. If you get down to the real basics of digitally having an existence, it just makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And having that conversation with people has peeled the onion back for me of recent that, yes, I want that. And then when you start to explore with them those called CTAs, the call to action, events that occur on the site, you and I have both seen in a lot of cases, they don't even exist, number one. Or to get to a call to action at some point may have taken, 5, 6, 7, 10 clicks. I'll get into that navigation, but I think the root of that, you can have engagement and conversion. But before you can do that, I think you have to have a general sense and understanding of that user journey on your site, where it works and where it doesn't, and then understand the best you can the persona of that user without having their name, his or her, or their title. But you certainly, if you have the right site built technologically along with your marketing stack, you could start to identify, oh, I think I know where Kylie's going on my site. She probably wants this. And she's made 2 search results occur in her navigation. This is where she's at. I better intersect her at this point because she probably wants something uncensored, right? These are all things you can do today. And it starts to paint a picture of that mysterious user on your site that you didn't know what they do, but they came and they stayed on for 30 seconds and went away. Why? Or they stayed for 3 minutes. Why? Right? Do I have triggers or signals in my web environment existence that tell me more about that user journey and who they might be, right? Those are conversations now that should be commonplace because you can do all that easily. You could do it with off the shelf or plug-in things, depending on whatever technology that you're presently using. How many customers do you actually talk to, Kylie, that understand their user journey on the site when you start conversations with them? Or
that's a great question. Much fewer than I would hope. And I think that those customers feel the same way. They might have some form of analytics, at somewhat of a base level, but really understanding things like the clicking journey, the heat maps. What am I even hovering on? I mean, all of those things we can know. How long did I, especially someone that it's exciting, maybe they did download a schematic or something. How long did they hover on that page? That's good to know. If they looked at one thing for 30 seconds, but they looked at this other thing for 1 minute and 30 seconds, that might be more applicable. And it feeds into that whole journey. So, I try to interject that point into conversations as much as possible, because I think that is one of those ground level opportunities to just understand, if you're going to have the conversation of digital presence, who are you presenting to?
Yeah, boy, who are you presenting to? So all those sales calls, Zoom calls that you and I have been on, Kylie, right? And your sidekick, Carrie. We'll have to get Carrie on a couple of these calls.
Absolutely.
Forward. Yeah. The title, it would have been easier if we would have known, launching this business, we're going to approach distributors and manufacturers and talk to all their webmasters, right? There used to be the term, somebody could be the webmaster. This goes back a few years, probably more than I want to mention, but you can't do that today. It's hard for me to even find a webmaster title, right? But when we engage with customers and the people that hook on to one of our marketing pieces, or call you, Kylie, or call me and say, hey, let's have a conversation, we have no idea what to expect on who these people are going to be in terms of their title or function. Rarely is it the exact people that own the website.
Sure.
Or if we ask the question, hey, Kylie, who owns the website? Well, that's a great question. I hate that when it comes back to me. Good question, Steve, or that's a great question. I expect the customer should be able to answer that, right? And that's an assumption I shouldn't be doing or have, right? Because today there are so many stakeholders into that website that I think that it's gone too far. Let me qualify that. If you've got to be able to, if you have to convince 10 people within your organization that this website has to be transformed, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Sure.
Why are we having to convince sales, marketing, IT, product development, engineering, and marketing? Why do and the C-suite, that you have to transform it, and who owns it?
That's a really great point about who
I
who
don't
are we
understand
talking
that.
to?
Why that exists today. This should be a lot easier than that. And I think we're getting to
Sure.
that. I think we're getting to that.
That's a great point. Yeah, there isn't uniformity anymore, and a lot of people do wear a lot of hats,
Yeah.
especially when you blur the lines of sales and marketing. And but who are we speaking with? Who does the digital presence, the digital transformation impact? And who cares? And the answer really should be, no matter who we're talking to, it should matter to everybody.
It should.
It's again,
It
it
should.
should matter to sales, it should matter to marketing for demand gen purposes, it should matter to the C-suite for, having that presence, having that return on investment, having that time saved, having that 24/7 salesperson available all the time. But it is a little bit more difficult to navigate than
It is. And it is difficult. It is to navigate and understand who owns the site, who are all the stakeholders. We're talking about people. So this is now, people to people conversation about how we can remove the need for people and digitalize, what has to be done. I want to touch on something that, Tyler Crockett, who heads up our marketing, brings forward a lot, and that is humanizing the digital experience, right? And I think that becomes really important to understand for people that as much as we want to digitally transform ourselves and just intermediate human intervention, you still have the need, if you can, to create a more humanized interaction, even though it's digitalized, it's digital. And, and that's hard to do. But I think digitally, with the right team and strategy, you can create that digital human experience, that the digital experience that's more humanized, right? And it kind of behaves. A good example that would be if I understand the intent of why you visited my site, why you're navigating through it, I can intersect you at certain points and deliver something, because I've pretty much figured out this is what you're probably going to be needing at this point. That's humanizing that experience. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head, anticipating needs. And, in days of yore, we did that by looking at people's faces and reading body language. And, people have been more forthright. And speaking of the great and powerful, wise Tyler, he made a comment recently about, it's not odd to do that with somebody that's on your website. If you were a brick and mortar and somebody walked into your store, you're going to say, hey, how can I help you? Or if they're looking at something specific, can I tell you more about this product? And we want to do that. We want to keep that warm touch alive and viable for businesses. So I think that's a fantastic point.
Tyler, he is the champion of analogies, right? So I swore I wasn't going to try to make an analogy, but you brought up a store, right? You walk into a store which has everything. Take a Walmart that has virtually everything possible that you would need, but yet the segmentation and how you walk through that makes it pretty easy. Oh, that's houseware. There's signs, right? There's, that's auto, that's housewares, or whatever it may be, and so much of the time, everybody wants to throw everything on the website, everything, and do so all at once. right? So it's, it's like I used to feel when I first was going to China, and I'm looking at websites in China, and it's like Las Vegas on steroids, at a magnitude of 1,000, right? It's like so much, right?
Sure.
And we seemed, I think here in the US, for most of the companies that we talk to, there's this propensity to, hey, I do all these things and just throw it up there, right? And this is where I really love when Brandon, who heads up our UI UX teams, right? When Brandon, is able to really get into a customer's head and give them reasons why showing too much changes this in a bad way, why showing little and more relevant, right? Things at this point, that really starts to clear up, I think, in the customer's mind. Okay, because you guys and gals at Big Zeta understand our business. And I think we need to get to that. One of the success points, I think, for Big Zeta is the fact that we understand the business. I mean, we live and breathe and came from technology. And, we've seen the mistakes, we've experienced mistakes ourselves, but we see those gaps and holes digitally that exist with distributors and manufacturers,
Right.
because we've lived it. We've lived it. And some of us have come from suppliers and distributors and marketing and, in different SaaS companies and technology. So I think that helps customers ease into this digital transformation with Big Zeta, is because, we got you. we know what you're dealing with. We live that every day. And I think that's important. As much as content and deliverable of what you present online, we at Big Zeta have to do the same thing and make sure we're relevant for you, so you get that, right? And that's been a big, I think, value for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being able to talk the language with them and understand what they're up against.
Sure. And I know we've been chatting. I could talk to you, Steve, all day long.
As I could with you, Kylie.
Just as a final thought for me, I want to elaborate on, your last point about, our team as a whole, how collaborative Big Zeta is internally to be able to, provide such a tailored experience with our clients. Truly, I consider them to be partners. And, as you said, I've been with Big Zeta almost 7 months now, but I've been in sales and business development my entire career. And I've always been grateful for an opportunity to be one of the least smart people in the room. And I get to represent a lot of people on our team that have really smart and big ideas. So, that's a really great thing that we've been able to hone in on and create this wonderful team. So thank you for mentioning that part.
I think you bring up a good way to end this, and that is that, whatever the digital transformation or experience you as a customer are desiring, or you want to figure out, we got you. We do. We can help with that. And I just on any front. And about the teams, we made sure today to make sure that our teams are built or staffed, if you will, staffed to appropriately understand each of those individual nuances, whether it's your technology stack, whether it's your UI, UX, design tool needs, content, and data, to understand all that. We built our teams and have staffed it accordingly, individually in each of those units. Heck, I think globally now we're up to about 150 employees, right? But if whatever that need is that you seem to want to have, I trust me, we have that team that can address that for you, because we get you. We do get you. So with that, Kylie, I look forward to our next conversation, whenever that may be. And
absolutely.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.